Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It is Drew here. Today we are going to be checking out Alex Bale's Why Blue's Clues is a Fantasy Inside of Law and Order theory by Alex Bale. So yeah, obviously if you don't know, we did a bunch of reaction to his SpongeBob theories, and now he's here with the Blue's Clues one. And I'm actually just as excited for this one as a SpongeBob theory, because when I was watching Blue's Clues when I was a kid, I definitely didn't think it was Law and Order fantasy, but I did always have like it was the only show that I watched that felt a little bit off. Like, not maybe that there's an underlying message, but there was definitely something up with the show. So I'm interested to see how he comes up with this conclusion. I never judge Alex Bale before the vid. I only judge after, because he ends up cooking. So yeah, if you want to subscribe and check out my SpongeBob reactions, go ahead. Make sure you subscribe to Alex Bale. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Hi there.
What's up?
Blue's Clues is an educational children's TV
Alex?
show about a man named Steve who lives in a magical world where he spends his day talking to inanimate objects, jumping through picture frames, and trying to find clues to help understand his magical blue dog.
Of course.
Law & Order is a gritty, realistic police procedural / legal drama that involves New York City homicide detectives trying to solve murders and prosecute criminals.
Exactly.
These two shows
Don't know how
are
they're connected.
very different. You could not find two shows more polar opposite than Blue's Clues and Law & Order. True. And yet, despite this, not only do I believe that these two shows exist in the same universe, but I'm also
Alright, as I said in the intro, we don't judge before, but
going to be proving that the entire Blue's Clues show is actually just a fantasy inside of the mind of a single Law & Order side character. Yes, I'm being serious. I know that sounds crazy,
appear in Law & Order?
Just stick with me, because I'm pretty sure that I have discovered a 29-year-old secret that has never been talked about before today.
He's
Get
confident.
ready, because this
is
is
confident.
The Blue's Clues Law & Order theory.
Alright, Alex, I'm excited. Starring Steve. Joe? Josh? Yeah, so what happens when the others take over? Like, how does that canonically work? By Alex Bale. I'm so excited. Part 1, Dream Theory.
By far, the most common type of fan theory is the dream theory. The idea that everything happening in a story is actually all just inside of a character's head, whether they're stuck in a coma, or they're dreaming, or hallucinating, or they're actually dead. Pretty much every piece of media has some kind of dream theory. And it's sort of the lazy, low-hanging fruit of fan theories. You can just apply it to literally anything, and usually
Facts. That's what I was saying. I feel like it's a popular theory because it applies to literally almost everything.
Never actually any evidence besides, whoa, this show is so crazy.
It's so crazy that it has to be a dream.
That must mean it's a dream. And surprisingly, the show that seems to have the most of these types of fan theories is Blue's Clues. You got Steve is actually schizophrenic, Steve is actually in a mental asylum, Steve is actually a drug addict, Steve is actually in prison, Steve is actually a murderer who killed his parents. Oh my god. Even
yeah, I was just about to bring this video up of his. He did a little parody thing.
Parody of these theories back in 2017. So yeah, it's a pretty basic, normal kid show.
Oh my gosh,
Steve,
Alex, you've changed.
A 30-year-old schizophrenic who killed his parents pretends to be a kid. You know, that was before I dedicated my life to making fan theories about kid shows. And look, I understand the appeal of these types of theories. It's fun to take something innocent from your childhood and give it a dark, edgy plot twist. That's kind of literally my job right now.
Literally your channel, man.
Why are there so many of these theories about specifically Blue's Clues? Well, I think it's because everything about this show has always felt fake. Steve is the only real person in this world. He looks like a young adult, but he acts like a child.
So weird to me
when
I was
younger. He lives alone in a house where he spends his day jumping into picture frames or talking to unseen voices or inanimate objects. It just kind of sounds like I'm describing someone who is experiencing some kind of false reality. Even the way Steve moves around is strange. He never actually leaves the room. He just kind of pretends to walk in place while this fantasy world moves around him. Come on.
I mean, obviously you can just chop that down to that's how they wanted to edit it, but you know. The show is old.
Obviously,
it's
that was
old.
more of a filming limitation,
Yeah.
but it still adds to this feeling of fakeness.
Yeah,
but
I agree, I
Other
agree.
than these surface-level weird vibes the show gives off, there's never actually been any strong evidence to prove one of these theories.
I used to believe the
And
schizophrenic
believe me,
one.
I and others have looked. It has been 28 years since this show first came out. You know, you'd think if there was actually some kind of smoking gun here, we would have found it by now. But
wait till you got
what
Alex
if that's
Bale
because we've all been looking
in the
in
wrong,
the wrong
place.
place.
Oh.
So, the other day, I
Sorry.
stumbled upon an interesting piece of Blue's Clues trivia. A
That
year
is?
after Steve Burns filmed the Blue's Clues pilot, he had a small role in an episode of Law and
Order.
And I thought the idea of seeing Steve from Blue's Clues in a gritty, realistic cop show was kind of funny.
Yeah, kinda
So
funny,
I decided
honestly.
to track down the 1995 episode titled Cruel and Unusual. Just
Oh my gosh, so him just seeing that little thing caused this whole theory.
a heads up,
I'm so
this
excited,
episode
man.
deals with some pretty serious subject
Ooh.
matter, so
That's
please
spectrum
proceed with
disorders.
caution.
Yeah. That
This
let's-
episode, Steve Burns plays a kid with autism named Kevin Jeffries.
Oh, he
Morning,
does.
how are you? Great. What time is it?
10:15.
No, it's 10:18.
We learn that Kevin has trouble communicating with others and often harms himself. So his parents send him to live in a children's behavioral clinic.
Damn.
Just what was the behavioral clinic doing for him?
When Kevin was 10, he started to hurt himself.
We didn't know what to do. We couldn't keep Kevin here. We had to send him away.
We later find
sad.
out that the doctors at this clinic were horribly mistreating him by giving him intense
Ah.
electroshock therapy and forcing him to wear a sensory deprivation helmet for days.
He kept Kathy in
As sad as this is, I can see where he's going with this.
this
I can
helmet
see
for
where he's
3
going.
straight days.
That's sad as
this
shit, man.
helmet cut off the blood supply to our daughter's brain.
The episode
Oh.
starts with Kevin after he's escaped from the facility, but tragically he gets
Arrested.
arrested and later succumbs to the injuries sustained from his abuse.
The blood caught
and
from the helmet is what
dies.
killed him.
I don't know, Mike. I think the kid's dead.
Ah.
And the rest of the episode follows the detectives investigating his death. So yeah, this is a very sad and serious episode,
So you
and
think
it deals
Blue's
with some
Clues
real
played in his
systemic
head
issues that are still a problem
after he died or
today.
something?
And like I was saying, this show is clearly very, very different than Blue's Clues.
Right.
But what I find interesting about this is that for years, people have been trying to prove that Steve is actually in prison or a mental facility, and now we have this piece of media where we see Steve's actor in that exact position, and
Exact
as far as I'm
position,
aware,
wow.
no one's ever really talked about this. I mean, sure, Kevin's not schizophrenic, he has autism, but seeing as how he was being abused and put into sensory deprivation for days where he couldn't hear or see anything, you can
Right.
kind of imagine that anyone in that position might try to escape to some kind of fantasy inside of their head.
I sure as hell
So yeah,
would.
I thought this was an interesting coincidence, but at the end of the day, that's kinda all it was. Like, obviously, just because the same actor shows up in 2 different shows doesn't mean they're actually connected. But
True.
then, I took a closer look at this episode, and I started to notice more and more weird similarities between Kevin
Like?
and Steve. At first, it just started with
I feel like the big glaring, thing is they have different names. So why would he change his name?
some little things. We are told by Kevin's parents that he was learning to draw.
Thanks to him,
Learning to draw.
Kevin was learning to draw.
And in every episode of Blue's Clues, Steve draws in
He
his
does.
handy-dandy notebook.
He does.
Handy dandy? Notebook.
Okay.
Let's draw a rectangle.
What else you got, Alex?
And there.
What else you got?
Cheese.
Okay, but so what? Lots of kids like to draw.
Facts,
But we are
facts.
also told that when Kevin harmed himself, he was strapped to a chair.
We put them in a chair, and then we hold them there using soft cuffs.
And in every episode of Blue's Clues, Steve spends a lot of time in his thinking chair.
We're ready to sit in our
Thinking chair.
Now that we're in our thinking chair, let's think.
And then, when Kevin escaped the facility, he kept asking
Could be a
people
coincidence,
what
though.
time it was.
What time is it?
What time is it?
10:15.
What time?
How you doing today, huh?
What time?
Now, it is common for some people with autism to rely on specific schedules or routines, but
100%.
what time it is also really important in Blue's Clues.
What time is it?
What time is it now?
Steve has a cleanup time,
We just had cleanup time.
a nap time,
It's Blue's nap time.
Now it's time for
If he pulls up Law and Order and he says, "Is it cleanup time?" he may have already bought me. But this could also be another coincidence. Because my thing is, what are the odds that somebody who worked on Law and Order was like, "Hey, we gonna make this a Blues," like, and does it align with, how would both the creators align themselves with that? Of
so
each
there's
specific
a
show, you know what I mean?
clock. And most of all, every day, Steve has mail time.
Mail time. Mail time. Mail time.
The mail's here.
So yeah, there's some weird similarities
For
here,
sure.
but nothing actually concrete. I
Facts.
didn't really start to take any of this seriously until
Until?
I realized.
What's the big break,
after
Alex?
Kevin escaped, we are told that he went to a movie theater. And guess what he did in the theater?
What?
Movie started at 10. He was out of here by 10 after 10. Got out of his seat, walked into the screen.
Kevin got out of his seat and tried to walk into the screen. Doesn't that sound exactly
goes to
like
the paintings.
Steve Blueskadooing into a picture?
Blue skidoo, we can too.
Blue skidoo. Ah.
Walked into the screen.
This kind of feels like more than a coincidence. So this is when I first
Okay.
started to consider, is it really possible
Okay.
that Kevin Jeffries from Law and
You hitting
Order
me?
is the real Steve and Blue's Clues is all a fantasy he created to escape his abusive reality? Okay, I know you're not convinced yet, and to be honest, neither was I, but don't worry.
Right.
We are
'Cause
just getting started.
At the end of the day, because that'd
Kevin's
just be a
behavioral
coincidence.
clinic is in New York City, and the one-time characters actually leave the Blue's Clues fantasy world
They
and
go to New
the
York
real
City.
world, they end up in New York.
Blues Clues in New York City? This is epic!
Also, in the very first episode of Blue's Clues, we can see a newspaper from the New York Times inside of Steve's house,
Damn.
strongly implying that's actually where he lives. We can also see objects from Blue's Clues in Kevin's life. In Kevin's parents'
How?
house, we see a very large salt and pepper shaker, just like Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper.
Hi, Mr.
I'm gonna keep it real. I'm gonna chop that one up to, they just had that shit in the background. But
Salt and Mrs. Pepper.
we'll see.
Hello, Steve.
And in the clinic, we can see a red bucket, just like Steve's friend, Pale.
Hello, Pale.
Hi, Steve.
Also, when
Okay.
Steve left the show to go to college, he left on a blue bus.
What does that mean?
And when Kevin escaped the clinic, in his pocket, he had a schedule for the Greyhound,
Here you go. Amtrak schedule, Greyhound schedules.
which is also a blue bus. All right, those are some more interesting connections,
Could
but
be
you're
coincidences,
probably
though.
still not completely sold yet, right?
Honestly, I was genuinely more sold on the other stuff that you brought up earlier. Those coincidences seem more like those could be less coincidency. Those just felt like coincidences, you know?
Well, check this out. When
Let's do this.
Steve eventually left the show to go to college, he was replaced by his younger brother Joe,
Oh, hi. It's me, Steve's brother Joe.
and later, Joe got replaced by their cousin Josh.
Don't tell me they bring up in Law and Order that he has a brother with those names.
Hey, it's me, Josh.
What's up,
And
Josh?
not only does Kevin also have a younger brother, but at the clinic, there is a nurse named Joe
What's your name?
Joe Garvey.
Joe Garvey, you're under arrest for assault.
and
What?
an occupational therapist named Josh.
Take a look at the amended complaint. An occupational therapist, Josh
Okay,
Bingham, was
but those are
dropped.
like
I
things from
think
his traumatic
that Kevin
times.
is taking
Those are names from
aspects
his traumatic
his
times.
real life,
Yes.
the objects or the names of the people working at the
Whoa.
clinic, and applying them to his fantasy. Also,
I like
this
that,
one
I
is
like
less
that.
impressive, but the name Kevin is also the name of the Blues Clues UK host.
Hello out there. It's me, Kevin.
Also,
That might
also,
genuinely
check
be a
this out.
coincidence.
Kevin's behavioral clinic has the same initials as Blues Clues. Huh? That one's also not that impressive, I know. But wait. If this theory is true, and all of this is just inside of Kevin's head, then why does the main character of his fantasy keep changing?
Hi. Come on in. Hi. Come on in.
Hi. Come on in.
Those are new kids from the clinic.
Well, at first, I thought maybe Joe and Josh could actually just be from two different kids who took Kevin's spot in the clinic after he died. But the clinic gets shut down at the end of the episode.
Oh,
You
okay.
made them close the clinic.
So they would all have to be from Kevin. But why? Well, we're told that Kevin has tried to escape from the clinic before.
Well, we called the police this morning.
Trying to
as soon as the
escape from
clinic
Blue's
told us that
Clues?
Kevin ran away. He's done this before.
So, what if every time a host leaves Blue's Clues, it's actually Kevin trying to escape the clinic, and when he's inevitably put back inside,
He's done this before.
his fantasy resets with a new Blue's Clues host.
Weird.
Come on in. Hi. Come on in. Hi. Come on in.
Okay, so there is a surprising amount of connections here. You can't deny that. But
I
it
agree.
still
I agree.
kind of feels like we're missing something. Like, I can see why Kevin would imagine a fun, colorful world to escape his abuse.
Right.
But why is Kevin's fantasy so focused on playing a scavenger hunt game with a blue dog? As far as I can tell, there's
Real.
nothing similar to that in this episode. Well, I think to answer this, we need to take a closer look at what Blue's Clues actually is.
We are gonna play Blue's
At
Clues.
the beginning of the Law
Clues.
and Order episode, Kevin's doctor explained to the detectives why Kevin harmed himself.
It's pretty common with some autistic children. It's frustration because of their inability to communicate.
It's frustrations because of his inability to communicate. Now, autism is a spectrum, and it's a lot more complicated and nuanced than the way TV shows like this tend to portray it. But it is true that some people with autism have varying levels of difficulty communicating. And I think this becomes interesting when we take a look at what Blue's Clues actually is.
Well, what story should we tell? Great idea. We'll play Blue's Clues to figure out what story Blue wants us to tell.
It's a game where you try to understand Blue, a character who has an inability to communicate. This is literally the entire premise of the show.
Wait, that gave me goosebumps a little
This
bit.
is telling us that Blue represents the side of Kevin who struggles to communicate with others.
Okay. I really do like that, but Alex, I think you're gonna need that one thing that kind of maybe doesn't prove it, but like makes it damn near undeniable for this one to click with me, because it's this one's so far fetched. But I'm seeing everything's piecing together quite well, but
okay, but
we'll see.
Where did the idea for a blue dog come from? Like I said, I couldn't find any references to dogs in this episode. The closest visual was this vaguely blue drawing in Kevin's room that I can't really make out.
I wouldn't say
or
that's
this
a dog.
teddy bear that kind of had a similar pattern to Blue, but nothing really concrete.
Nothing.
Which is weird because Blue is such a major part of this fantasy.
Facts.
But
Maybe
then
Blue is him.
I realized it doesn't matter if we can't find a direct connection, because in Blue's Clues, Steve didn't actually adopt Blue. In a flashback episode of Blue's Clues, we learned that when Steve was younger, he read a book about a blue dog.
It's a book about a puppy.
Which caused Blue to magically come to life.
Weird.
And I think this is also probably what happened with Kevin. We see that the children's behavioral clinic is full of what we can reasonably assume are children's books.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a book in here that also gave Kevin the idea for a blue dog, just like Steve.
I could see
In fact,
that.
this idea of a children's book giving Kevin ideas for his fantasy is exactly what we see at the start of the Blue's Clues intro.
Right. Opening up the book.
Hi, it's me, Steve.
Every single episode of Blue's Clues starts with a stack of children's books in the real world, before going inside of a book called Blue's Clues where the episode takes place. The show literally tells us every episode that Steve's world is fake and comes from a book. And I think this real world full of children's books is actually the Law and Order behavioral clinic.
That's crazy. That's crazy to
If this
think
is
about.
true, that also means that there's probably a book literally called Blue's Clues in the clinic that Kevin is basing his...
I need an explanation on the name, because Kevin to Steve, did he bring up a Steve name? I know he brought up Josh and
fantasy off of
the other guy.
So even if we never see a blue dog or even hear the name Steve in this Law and Order episode, Kevin still could have gotten all of those ideas from an existing Blue's Clues book.
So he's pretending to be Steve from
now,
the book,
the
is what he's saying?
only thing that doesn't really fit with this idea is mail time.
Hello, mailbox.
Hi, Steve. Have I got a letter for you?
Sure, maybe the talking purple mailbox was just something from the book, but there's no way Steve watching videos of kids in the real world would be something in a children's book.
Facts.
Look, it's a letter from our friends.
Hi, Steve. This is where we play with our blocks.
Oh yeah, how do you explain this one, Alex?
So, what are these videos?
I forgot about these.
Well, the behavioral clinic is full of other children.
You want to see what a good day is for some
so
of
the
these
kids, you think?
So, I think these videos are Kevin's perception of the other kids.
Maybe.
There is just an undeniable amount of connections and similarities between this episode and this show. It just really feels like Blue's Clues is all a fantasy inside of Kevin Jeffries' head. But at this point, you're probably wondering, could any of this actually be intentional?
My thoughts exactly. Is any of this even real?
If this theory is true, does that mean that the entire plot of Blue's Clues was actually secretly based on this one random episode of Law & Order? I'll admit, that seems unlikely, especially since this episode came out a year after the Blue's Clues pilot was filmed. I think it's a lot more...
Okay, but it just for something to be intentional doesn't mean it has to happen before. You can like do something intentionally after, create an origin story, you know what I mean?
More likely
there's so many times where origins are dropped 10 years after a series.
That if this was intentional, then it was probably just the Law & Order creators deciding to secretly connect these two shows on their own.
Yeah.
Maybe just because they thought it would be funny, I don't know. Or maybe it's some weird mixture of both. Because even years after this episode came out, Blue's Clues does still seem to weirdly line up with it. I honestly don't know. And to be fair, this could all still just be a bunch of weird coincidences and that's it. But regardless of the creator's intent, it still works, you know? And it makes talking about Blue's Clues a lot more interesting. And at the end of the day, I think that's kind of the point of all of these edgy Blue's Clues fan theories. Right. And this was originally where I planned on ending this video.
But we got something new?
But there was still one lingering question that was bothering me.
And
if Blue's Clues really is just inside of Kevin Jeffries' head, then what about when Kevin died at the beginning of the episode? I mean, I guess we can just say that the entire Blue's Clues timeline takes place before Kevin's death, and if the show ever gets canceled, then we can just say that that is when Kevin died and the fantasy ended. But what if I told you we've already seen Kevin's death?
Stop, dude. I'm getting goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps.
So,
is it him
I recently
leaving?
watched the new Blue's Clues movie from 2022 called Blue's Big City Adventure.
I have not seen this.
And not only did I find even more similarities between this movie and the show, but I believe that this movie is showing us the day that Kevin died.
Because it is in New York.
End of the Blue's Clues timeline.
Let's see it. Let's see it, man.
Josh, the newest host of Blue's Clues, going on a big adventure to audition for a Broadway musical in New York City.
Right.
Blue, we are definitely not in storybook world anymore.
It's kind of what you'd expect out of a modern-day Blue's Clues movie.
Right.
He goes on a journey to the real world and gets lost. There's lots of wacky hijinks, but in the end, he finds his way and gets the part.
We want you to be the star of our Broadway show.
Yes, of course. Yes. What?
But if you watch this movie with this theory in mind, so many things take on a whole new meaning.
Let's see it,
The first
my man.
thing that immediately caught me off guard was the opening song.
It's a brand new day.
This song is about starting the day, and Josh keeps saying, "Good morning."
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Blue.
And literally, the first thing we hear Kevin Jeffries say is, "Good morning."
So is Donovan.
Good morning, how are you?
Despite it clearly being night. We also hear this line in...
Oh my god, that makes it hit 10 times more the fact that it was night. Because he's just saying good morning. He's just saying, good morning, how are you?
Josh's song.
This life is just like a beautiful dream.
This life is just like a beautiful dream. Interesting.
Oh no.
And while
Don't do
Josh
this to me,
sings, the
Alex.
other characters keep telling him to wake up.
Wake up.
Wake up.
It's a brand new day.
Right away, this
Why is that
movie
creepy?
feels different. Like
Why
it's
is that
trying to draw
creepy?
attention to the fact that this world is just Kevin's fantasy and it's time for him to leave it.
To leave.
Josh leaves his fantasy world to go to the audition in New York, just like how Kevin escapes
And
the
this is
clinic
when he
at the start of
leaves.
the episode. And just like Kevin, Josh
Oh my
immediately
gosh.
seems very disoriented by the outside world.
Oh my gosh, he's moving just how he was moving too.
Until, of course, his fantasy starts to take over to protect him from reality.
Right. And then he taps into it.
But
hey,
what's
that's at least
interesting
the
about
episode
this
though.
movie is that for the very first time ever, we get these little glimpses of Blue's Clues from other people's perspectives.
Don't you think so, Madam Mustard? Oh?
Lovely to meet you.
Whoa! Mr. Salt! Mrs. Pepper! Am I glad to see you? Oh my God!
Like I said, this movie feels different. We learn that Josh's audition is at 3 o'clock, and the whole movie is just him trying to find.
I just find it, one thing I find hard to believe is that they made a whole movie to add into the theory. You know what I mean? Because this movie, I get what he's meaning. This movie does feel like a weird energy about it with the way things are toned.
The audition before time runs out.
It's almost time for my audition. Oh my gosh. We don't have much time, Blue.
Could this be why
We don't have much
Kevin
time.
kept asking people what time it was?
What time is it?
What
Oh.
time? What time?
Josh also doesn't know where his audition is. All he knows is that it's in a theater somewhere.
Excuse me. Do you know the address to the theater? Which theater? I don't know
Oh my
which
gosh,
theater.
he ends up in a
Maybe
movie theater trying to
this
go onto
is
the
why
screen.
Kevin went to a movie theater after he escaped, because he thought it was his Broadway audition.
There is way
Now,
too many
in the
connections
Law
for
and
this to
Order
mean
episode,
nothing.
Shortly
At this
after
point.
leaving the theater, Kevin gets arrested and then tragically dies in police custody.
Right.
But that's not what happens in this movie. Josh goes to the theater and gets the part,
We want you to be the star of our Broadway show.
Yes, of course. Yes.
but instead of him leaving and dying like Kevin, we immediately cut to him performing the musical in a big climactic finale.
My dream is a reality.
It's all a dream, brother.
So, if this movie really is Kevin's final escape, then what if this is what Kevin experiences as he dies?
As he dies, his final act. I see it, man.
And I can feel my world changing.
A
I definitely
massive
see it. That's
final
creepy.
magical song where he's surrounded by all of the friends from his fantasy, the only people who ever really understood him. Even the old hosts show up for this final send-off for Kevin.
And thank you for making this a day and an adventure that I will never forget.
I'll never forget how you helped me find all those clues. Thanks again for all your help.
No, really. Now it's
Oh,
over.
this is off-putting, man.
So long.
The thought that we literally see him die.
And that is sadly where Kevin Jeffries' story ends. Now, I know this final movie theory maybe doesn't have as much evidence as the rest of my theory, but
Actually, I think it puts it together a lot better than you initially thought. I think the fact that the connections not only carried over from the show when they were in the same time frame, but to a movie 20 years later is making it 10 times more believable. I wasn't buying it until this movie bit. Is that just me or am I an idiot?
But
the
regardless,
connections
I
leading
like
on 20 years
thinking
later.
that maybe Kevin found some peace
Right.
in his final moments. And yeah, I know that this movie came out 27 years after the Law and Order
That's what makes it more
episode, so it's
believable.
probably a stretch to say that they're still connected. Wait, is that fucking B.D. Wong?
I'm the director of Rainbow Puppy's Broadway musical.
B.D. Wong from Law and Order SVU is the
Okay,
fucking
buddy.
director of Josh's musical?
I'm not entirely
hilarious.
comfortable labeling the suspect a serial killer.
We want you to be the star of our Broadway show.
Holy shit!
We just figured out Blue's Clues.
We just figured out Blue's Clues. We just figured out Blue's Clues.
Because this is my job. This is actually my job.
Awkward.
All right,
What a fun
that
job.
is my theory. Thank you so much for watching. Hope I didn't ruin Blue's Clues for you.
Nah, man.
Hey,
Always
thanks
thought
for
the show was
1 million
weird.
subscribers. That's really cool.
Much
YouTube
deserved.
sent me this
Oh.
big golden rectangle.
Hey, you guys watching this video, please subscribe to me. I know I'm far from the gold, but I'll take this. I'll take this. Just subscribe. I want the silver one. That it looks so beautiful. We'll have it right here every video. Hey, Book of Bill. We'll move Book of Bill over here. We'll have the play button right here. All right, guys, just subscribe, please. We need it.
I got that now. Also, you know,
so awesome,
Steve
man.
Burns
Congrats.
is kind of active on the internet these days. So if by some chance you happen to see this Mr. Steve Blues Clues, I'm sure we would all love to hear your thoughts on this.
100%.
Even if that's just him calling me crazy. I'm fine. I'll take it.
Yeah,
I got more fan
awesome.
theories on the way. Musical. I'm doing a High School Musical one. Maybe a Breaking Bad one. Seemed like.
Obviously, if I cover a serious adult show like Breaking Bad, it's still gonna be focusing on something stupid. Alright.
People were interested in that, and I've got a bunch of other.
Alright, High School Musical. This is obviously Cars. I'm excited for a Cars theory. That's one of my favorite shows ever. I can't tell what these three are.
Other ideas I'm working on too, so subscribe to catch those. Make sure you hit the bell icon, because sometimes YouTube
Alex.
just randomly decides not to tell people when I upload.
That's facts. I actually didn't know this one dropped.
Hello, is anyone watching this video? Did YouTube tell anyone I uploaded? I hope so. Speaking of which, I recently posted a.
Alright, so you just plugging more stuff? Yeah. Alright. Respect, man, but I ain't gonna have to react to that. If you guys did enjoy, please do make sure to like, subscribe, comment down below your thoughts. Was this theory real? Do you believe it? Basically, do you believe it or not? I'm not gonna sit here and say, it's not one of those theories where I'm like, it's 100% confirmed, but it's one of those theories where it's like, there's a case for it. Like, would I say I believe it? I'll probably lean more towards no, but I would never rule it out. I would never rule it out. The stuff is there. I could definitely chop it up to like the creator of Law and Order was like, let's just make it have random ass connections to Blue's Clues. You know what I mean? But I don't know if this was orchestrated truly by both creators. But it going on 20 years later and having connections is very, very interesting. So, you know, I'm stuck in the middle. Honestly, I'm stuck in the middle. If you guys did enjoy my reaction, again, please do make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye bye.